What's up, guys? So our tanky variant for our physical minions build is done. So grab your Matas and let's jump right into this. All right, so if this is your first time here, this is the third version of this build. So if you haven't been following along, I'll put a card up here in the corner that will show you the earlier iterations of the build. There is a leveling guide, there is a medium budget, and a high budget. The previous video that we released was the high budget, which was doing a ton of DPS, but we were a bit squishy. This is the tanky variant of the build. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you, this is my personal POV. This is the one that I'm actually using on my character. We're going to go over the changes that I made. I went a little bit more middle of the road for the build, so I wanted to be a bit more tankier, but I also didn't want to drop a ton of DPS, so we went Goldilocks on this one, and you can definitely do more damage if you want, and you can also be more tanky. So I'm going to go over the different changes. I'll go over my POV first and the things that I did, and you can choose to copy mine directly if you want to, and I'll also go over some variants that you can change if you want to be tankier or do more damage. Okay, so as far as our weapon, we did go back to Mata's teachings. The previous video, we were using a convoking wand. We decided to go back to Mata's because the base crit is just super good. You could do a convoking wand. A really good convoking wand will surpass Mata's, but it needs to be a really good convoking wand. You're looking at probably at least anywhere from 100 to 150 divs. I didn't really see the point for a marginal upgrade. We're already doing a ton of damage. I'm not bossing. I'm basically just mapping right now. So I didn't really see the purpose for it. But if you want to go that route, you totally can get a really good convoking one, and it will do more damage than Matas. But we're using Matas here. If you decide to use Matas, my suggestion would be to do the Harvest Craft, which changes the quality, does not affect the physical damage, but it gives it 1% critical strike chance. And then what you want to do is you want to corrupt the Matas, hoping that it doesn't brick, and if it corrupts and it doesn't change anything with the item and it's good to go, then you're going to want to use the corrupted currency that raises the quality up to 29%. And then 28 to 29 is fine. 29, you don't really get anything. 28 is where the breakpoint is, and that's going to give us a flat 9% base crit to our minions, which is huge. It's a ton of damage. So if you want to do Matas, you want to try to go for that. And a +2 Matas is not that expensive. You can probably pick it up for like maybe like 2 or 3 divs, so should be good to go. Also, too, something to note on Matas as well. So they did fix NPOB where it wasn't showing the base crit correctly. So you will need to delete that line in your text here in your configuration if you are running Matas, because it's going to inflate your damage numbers. So just make sure you remove that if you are going to run Matas. So for our shield, we actually had a guy in our Discord that suggested Aegis Aurora, and I had tried this shield before, and it didn't perform very well, but we made some other changes in the skill tree, which we'll go over in a second, which has made this really, really good. So this is what I'm using, and what's nice is that it does grant determination to us, so it frees up a slot for us to add in some other things. And then one thing I will note on this too is that if you are going to use Aegis Aurora, because we are using the Summon Holy Relic, you are going to need to slot in a Reckoning skill gem, which is fine because we get determination here. We can pull determination out and put that skill gem in there. So that's what we're doing there. Our helm hasn't changed. Our chest, we have shifted off of Sokka Walls onto a Doppelganger. This just gives us a ton of tankiness. If you look at our stats over here, our max Fizz hit is 35,000. Our max chaos hit is 77,000, so pretty good. Also too, this is not reflecting the effective HP pool is not reflecting correctly. I'll show you that in a second. The reason being is for whatever reason POB is not calculating the determination from the shield in the numbers for the armor for us and for the minions. So I just added in a determination here. If you turn this off, it'll actually show the effective hit pool, which is quite a bit higher. It's about 100k. So you can definitely pump this number up to probably 200 or over for the tankier setup. But that's why that's on, just to kind of show the armor correctly. Okay, so yeah, that's the chest. The gloves are the same. Our boots are the same. The Ash of the Stars, that's the same. So we did shift off of using a double hungry loop to using one hungry loop. That's going to be for our Animate Guardian. And then the other one, you want to use this other ring to shore up any resistance problems that you have, chaos resistance, cold resistance, whatever it is, and maybe get a little bit of life on there. So that's what I did here. And then for our belt, we did shift off the Leash of Obligation. You could still use that leash, belt if you want to, but I decided to go with the Darkness Enthroned, which you'll see why we did this in the skill gem setup or the passive tree setup. That'll make more sense, but we decided to go with the Darkness Enthroned. Gives us a ton of damage and some life as well. Okay, Abyssal Jewels are these Abyssal Jewels that we're running, and then our flasks, we're still running Taste of Hate. We're running a Ruby Flask. We're running Bottled Faith. We're running a Lightning Flask, and then running Progenesis. For our skill gems, not too much has changed. We made a couple adjustments, but it's pretty much the same from all the other build guides. So, in the helmet, we're still running an Arcanist brand setup. And our weapon, we are running Val Molten Shell, Convocation, and now we're running a Stone Golem. The reason for that is Stone Golem just gives a ton of life regen, and we didn't really have a lot of life regen outside of our Summon Holy Relic. And our Carrying Golem was not doing too much damage because we took it out of the 6-link. So it just made more sense to add in a Stone Golem here. If you wanted to, you could drop the Stone Golem and just make it up to 2 Carrying Golems and maybe put a dash here if you want to do that. But I've really been liking the Stone Golem, so I would recommend putting that in there if you want to be a bit more tanky. For the shield, we're still running our Precision Dreadband Generosity setup. The chest piece is exactly the same. Still our raised zombies, our skeletons, and our 3 support gems. In our gloves, we're running Summon Holy Relic, Meat Shield, Raised Spectre, and Summon Carrying Golem. In our boots, we're running Pride and Reckoning. Now, the Reckoning, the reason why we're running that is to trigger our Summon Holy Relic. If you remember on the Surrender Shield, that actually has that skill just innately on the item. So we do need to have a counterattack to trigger, or an attack to trigger Summon Holy Relic, and this is how we do that. Okay, and the way we're able to free up that gem is we're taking off Determination because it's being granted by the shield. Okay. And then we did go back to a Divine Blessing Val Haste setup. We'll go over some options that you have if you don't want to run that. If you don't like pushing all those buttons, there's another option for that if you want to do that. And then as far as our rings go, we did, like I mentioned, we dropped down to 1 Hungry Loop, which is just going to have the Animate Guardian. And these are all of our various buffs from our different items. As far as the skill tree goes, not too much has changed. It's pretty much the same from the last video. There are a couple adjustments that we did make. So because we shifted off of Soccer Walls gives a ton of just flat attributes to us. So it makes it really hard to make up those attributes. So what we did to combat that is we did path towards Supreme Ostentation. If you don't know what Supreme Ostentation does, what this does is it makes it so where you just ignore attributes on gems, on items, things like that, but you get no bonuses from your attributes. So it's a double-edged sword, right? Like it's really good to be able to equip whatever you want without, just ignoring the requirements, but it does make us lose quite a bit of energy shield and quite a bit of flat health. So in order to make that up, what we do is we tattoo basically the entire tree. So these tattoos are really cheap. You can pick them up for like a couple C a piece. And then what we did is we did about half and half for energy shield and for chaos res. If you need more chaos res and more energy shield, you can tattoo more of whichever one that you prefer. And then for the strength nodes, we tattooed some fire resist and we tattooed some armor. So that's what we did there. And then in the top right corner of the tree, we did decide to take off the small cluster jewel in favor of a storm shroud to get ailment immunity. So we are ailment immune now, and we're also immune to corrupted blood. And that is the reason why we have these ghastly eyes that have the chance to avoid shock. So if you have 100% darkness enthroned, you can just get 1 ghastly eye jewel with 50% chance to avoid shock, and that'll get you to the 100% and get you ailment immune. If you have one that's less than 100%, which I do, any percentage of shock will get you there because it's going to double it. So any percentage is going to get you there. If you have less than 100, if you have 100%, just put it in at 50%, and then you can put whatever you want in the second ghastly eye. One thing I did forget to mention on the skill tree, if you do decide to go with the Aegis Aurora Shield, which I would recommend, you are going to want to make a slight adjustment. So instead of running Ghost Reaver, you are going to want to switch over to Zealot's Oath. The reason for that is we have a ton of leech. So that leech is all going to now go to our health and all of our regen, both from the Stone Golem and from Summon Holy Relic. That's going to go to our energy shield. So if you look over here on the left-hand side, we're regenerating about 940 energy shield a second. So this, I feel a bit more tanky with this. This is more of like a personal preference kind of thing. If you prefer the leech over the regen, that's up to you. You can go either one. I've done both. I personally like the feel of this just a little bit better, but if you like the leeching better, you can go for that route and not change this. As far as the different variations of the build, if you do want to get a bit more DPS, there are a couple of things you can swap out. So the first thing will be Mata's Teachings. You can get a better Convoking one, but it is going to be kind of expensive. A +2 Mata's with 9% base crit does a ton of damage, so to get a Convoking one that's going to be good enough, it's going to be around the ballpark of 100 to 150 divs, maybe more, but it's going to be expensive. So just keep that in mind. If you have the currency, go for it. If not, Mata's is a perfectly good solution. It does a ton of damage, and it's not nearly as expensive as a really good Convoking one. Okay. Another option is that you can continue using Soccer Walls if you're still using it, or you can swap back to it if you want to. Soccer Walls is going to give us a ton of DPS because of the juice on the aspect of the Avian. It's going to double the effectiveness, which is really big. So you could go that route if you want to. I wouldn't recommend it personally because Doppelgangers just provides us a ton of damage mitigation. I do harvest a lot, so I'm running into chaos damage all the time. So if you're not really running into chaos damage or you feel like you're tanky enough with Soccer Walls, continue using Soccer Walls. But I just think, for me personally, I like the Doppelgangers better. Okay. And the other option you can go for to get a bit more DPS is the belt slot. I like Darkness and Throne because it's kind of like a middle of the road. You can get some tankiness with the life. You can also get some pretty good damage out of it as well. But if you wanted to get a bit more damage, what you could go for is you could go back to Leash of Obligation if you wanted to go that route. Now, if you did go that route, you would want to run all 3 offerings, and you would put those in your wand with a trigger craft. So make sure you have a wand that does have an open suffix, or it's already crafted on there to get that. And then that would free up a slot in your helmet. You could actually potentially free up 2 slots if you decided to just manually cast Assassin's Mark. What I did when I ran this setup is I had Assassin's Mark and Desecrate on the Arcanist brand, and then I had all 3 offerings and the wand. So that's the options you can go for if you want to get a bit more DPS. If you want to be even more tanky than this current variant of the build is, you can definitely do that. There's just a couple of things that you would swap out. As far as the items go, there's really only one place that you can change. That's not going to drastically change the build up, and that's the belt slot. So I like Darkness Enthroned. It's a good middle of the road, but if you don't want to use Darkness Enthroned, you can use a Mage Blood. If you do decide to go with Mage Blood, you are going to want to replace the Taste of Hate and the Bottle of Fate for some Magic Flasks, some Mage Blood Flasks, and then you can run Shock Immunity on one of the flasks to get the Storm Shroud to trigger. So that's another option that you have. And then a third option you can go with is a belt called the Tides of Time, and that's kind of like a mini Mage Blood, and it's significantly cheaper than a Mage Blood. And what the Tides of Time does is it gives us flask recharges every couple seconds on top of any enchants that we have. So I have enchant whenever you get hit, you get a flask charge, and then the charges that we're getting from killing things too. So it gives you basically permanent uptime on your flask. It's not as 100%. It's basically 100% like a Mage Blood is. But what makes this belt uniquely good in our build is we are running 3 unique flasks, and the Tides of Time does apply to unique flasks. It's not only magic flasks. So that is a plus there. So that's another option you could go for. In our build, we do press a lot of buttons. Val Haste, Arcanist Brand, Val Summon Skeletons, regular haste. You get the idea. There's a lot of buttons that we press. So if you want to take that button count down by 1, you can do that in the form of running haste as a just static aura. The downside to that is that you will lose access to Storm Shroud, ailment immunity, and you are going to lose the increased effect because Divine Blessing does have increased effect on it, with the downside of we have to press a button every couple seconds. But if you hate pressing buttons, what I would do is you would put Val Haste in with Pride in an Enlightened setup. You can get away with an Enlightened 3 if you've got some mana in the tree or on your gear. If you don't have any mana anywhere in your gear, you're going to need an Enlightened 4 for this to work. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take this mana reservation efficiency node here for the 12% increased mana reservation efficiency. And then you're going to drop the Storm Shroud and get a 2 small cluster with mana reservation efficiency on the passive. And then there's a couple different notables you can go for. You can go for haste, mana reservation efficiency at 50%. You can go for determination. There's a couple different ones you can go for that will give you enough mana to be able to reserve haste as a constant aura. Well, that's pretty much it for the tanky variant of the build. If you guys enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing, as it does really help with the YouTube algorithm. I make weekly content, mostly on PoE, but sometimes we'll do some gaming news, some gaming reviews, things like that. As far as build guides go, I don't think I'll probably put out another video about this particular build, at least this league. I plan on league starting this next league because this build has been super fun. Hopefully you guys have been enjoying it. If you have been enjoying it, please leave me a comment in the comment section. If you have any questions, join my Discord. I'm pretty much available 24/7, and if I'm not available, there's a ton of really knowledgeable guys in the Discord. So, but thanks again, you guys. It's been super awesome connecting with you guys, and I hope to see you again. Have a great day /night. See ya.